generosity to make those gifts. They are donors. They do give to religious organizations, but they just don't make their large gifts to churches or religious organizations. So those are some things in which we see some differences in religious philanthropy as compared to normal nonprofit organizations.
Do you think that's because uh, universities, hospitals, not-for-profits, is it because of the clarity of their message? Is it because they're making specific asks? Why is the church missing that when we know that there are wealthy people in every church in America?
Yeah, so there's some different ways to think about it, and this missing part is what I like to call the missing ministry. Now, what do I mean by that? It's the idea that within the church, when we have conversations about generosity or giving or stewardship, those conversations tend to be exclusively focused on income sharing. Now, there's nothing wrong with income sharing conversations, but these kinds of gifts are not about income. They're not about income sharing. These are gifts of wealth from wealth holders. And that's a different kind of a conversation. It's a different kind of a conversation that we're not in the habit of having when it comes to the church. Now, I call this the missing ministry because if we look at the passage in 1 Timothy 6:17 through 19, and that's my current book project is to focus on that, it describes a specific ministry. Paul is giving instructions to Timothy on a ministry to the rich. And this is not talking about, the spiritually rich or rich and other. No, this is to the wealth holders. And in fact, in that one sentence, it's three verses in translations, but it's one sentence in the Greek. Paul actually uses words for wealth 7 or 8 times in one sentence. Wealth, 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 wealth. He's not talking about income sharing. He's using words for wealth and wealth sharing. And these are conversations that seem a little bit foreign to us. This idea of having a ministry to the rich, that seems a little bit uncomfortable. I make jokes, Tim, with the idea of saying, well, a normal conversation you might have, what do you do in the church? Oh, I'm the youth minister. I work with young people in the church, and I reach out to other young Christians in the community to work on their discipleship. Perfectly normal response. But it sounds a little offensive if we change it and say, well, what do you do? Oh, I'm the minister to the rich. What do you mean by that? Oh, I work with the rich people in our church, and I also reach out to other rich Christians in the community to help their discipleship. All of a sudden, we get really uncomfortable. That's not something we do. We've got all kinds of ministries, but that. And yet, when we read the words of Scripture in 1 Timothy 6:17 through 19, Paul is very distinct that you are supposed to have a ministry to the rich, and along with the ministry to older widows and younger women, older men, younger men, all of these different groups, and this is a specific one, and because of that sense of discomfort, there is the tendency not to learn how to have these conversations, not to learn the particular spiritual and financial issues that are of interest and importance to wealth holders and wealth accumulators. And so this is something that's missing. And I got to tell you, Tim, it's not missing when it comes to universities and hospitals and these other organizations. They are seeking out those high capacity folks and spending time. We may not call it ministry, but they are spending time trying to encourage their generosity. So I
So,
think, go ahead, Tim.
yeah, I was just going to say, let's circle back for something and just kind of get some definition around your conversation, because some people on our call may not understand the difference between income sharing and wealth. Can you just kind of explain the difference between that? Because I think in church space, a lot of times we just think money is money. but you're talking about two different buckets from where people do their giving. So flesh that out just a bit for us before we go on.
Yeah, so this is something that I do see getting confused a lot when people are having conversations about generosity, and this is the idea of understanding that um, first, just conceptually, income, that's what comes in, that's what you earn, that's your paycheck, right? That comes in on a weekly basis. Wealth is an accumulation of resources, okay? That is something that not everybody has. That there is a specific group that are, you might call them the accumulators. They have specific tendencies and they are holding wealth. Now, when we have conversations about giving, when we're talking about income sharing, then we think of these in terms of, oh, give up a cup of coffee a day to, help an underprivileged child. And so it is this trade-off between what I'm going to consume and what I'm going to give. Those conversations are fine, but that's a different ministry. That's a different message. Wealth sharing is a different spiritual conversation because it's a conversation among those who are wealth holders on what are you going to do with your buried wealth? Okay. And the idea is to understand that if you are a wealth holder, in many cases, you have wealth that exceeds the difference between your normal spending and your normal income for a normal life, right? These are the wealth holders are often people who honestly don't spend that much in their regular use of income. These are people that actually are pretty productive. They tend to have high earnings. And so they actually are in a situation where they are holding what we would say economically is an abundance, right? So the question is, what are you going to do with that abundance? And the real decision is, are you going to bury it? And the reason that you bury it in the ground is because you're afraid, right? Oh my goodness, this could happen, that could happen, all sorts of things could happen. If we don't trust in provision from God, then we're going to be afraid, and there's no amount of wealth that can completely allay all of those possible fears. And so we respond to fear by burying the wealth in the ground. Now, there's another alternative if you're not going to binge with it like Solomon did, which is not a good idea, does not lead to a good life, and that is the alternative of enjoying it. Now, this may seem like a bit of a surprise, but indeed, that is the language that Paul uses in that passage. That the reason that God gave this to you is for enjoyment. That's an ace clause, that the purpose of it is for enjoyment. And this is not some serious kind of stolid enjoyment. This is actually party time enjoyment when you look at the word. Now, how can you enjoy it? Well, it turns out that because this is all one sentence, it's not broken up into multiple sentences like you see in the English. The next word after for enjoyment is to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share. It is describing how you can enjoy your wealth. Don't bury it, put it to work. And it can be so much fun to enjoy your wealth when you enjoy it to do good, to be rich in good works. And fascinating there, that idea of saying, of that phrase of to do good. It has the word work embedded in the Greek word. And that sense of work, of ergon, means work that accomplishes something. And so, Tim, to come back to your question, why is it that you see universities and other places getting these really large gifts and churches don't? Well, notice the language that Paul is using. He is describing that the donors are supposed to do good. They are supposed to accomplish good works. They are the ones that accomplish things. Specific, visualizable. The word good is repeated in English. It's actually two different words in Greek. One means something that's intrinsically good. The other means beautifully good. The reason I say that and why that's important is that here at so I'm at a secular university. If you want to make a gift, I'm going to start talking to you about all the ways that you can make an impact for good. You tell me about what your life story is and what's important to you. I will come up with a way that you can use the university to be your instrument of impact to do good. You see, I'm not going to come and tell you about all the great things the university is doing. That'll get you the small pat on the head gift, but it won't get that major life investment gift. Instead, I'm going to learn about what's important to you, and I'm going to create ways that you can use the university as your instrument of impact. So, for example, let's say that you're interested in I don't know, pets, right? Oh, well, we've got a veterinary school. Let me tell you about a scholarship you could set up for our veterinary students. Or you really care about cats? Well, for a larger amount, you could set up a permanent endowed professorship of having somebody who's always going to be doing research on quality of life for cats, right? I mean, it could be anything. But notice that there's a difference where in ministry, we often want to just say, give us money because we're so great. We'll do something good with it. You just need to hand over the money. That's not the framing that Paul is using. He is using the framing where it is the donor, the rich Christian, who is making the impact. The technical term is the donor has agency. They are the one that is doing good, that is making it happen. And this is where we can get into a bit of that conflict, because that means that we allow the donor to put some instructions with their gift, that they can accomplish something specific and visualizable with their gift. We're really great at doing that in fundraising at the university, but with the church, it's a bit more like, no, that's not your role. You just give us the money and we'll figure it out. That's not really as compelling of a message when it now, again, I'll be happy to give you the pat on the head gift for that. And that's what the churches are getting. But the major life investment gift, that comes from the donor of wealth by providing them an opportunity to do good. It's the idea of I get to accomplish something specific that is personally meaningful, that I can say this is what I have done. And so I think those are some of the distinctions that we're missing. And so, Tim, I'll just end with this. I love there's a really effective fundraiser for a large organization, and he was on a flight. And the person next to him said, what do you do? And he shared his organization and his job. And the person said, oh, I could never do that. I couldn't ask people for money. And his response was great. He said, oh, I don't ask people for money. I ask people to do things that cost money. Notice the difference in the phrasing there. And he wasn't representing a ministry, but he was actually using Paul's words. The idea of I ask people to do good works that cost money. That's a different kind of an ask, and it's sometimes an ask that we're not making in that church context, where we're not so much talking about the impact of the donor's gift. We just want to talk about how wonderful we are as a ministry.